computer for the YouTube channel. All right, my friends. So today's Parsha, today is Friday. So we are doing, with Hashem's help, the 6th section. And we're going to try to also get into Shabbos, this section a little bit. Learning Parshas Kedoshim. Kedoshim is a fascinating Parsha. Unfortunately, very often, Kedoshim and the Parsha before Achrei Mos is a double portion. So you don't have that much time to study these things in detail, and it's a Parsha of being holy. It keeps on saying, be holy because I'm holy. But Baruch Hashem, we can get together at least whatever time we have on Friday and try to learn the Shabbos and Friday portion together. So let us learn together today's Chumash. V'chi yagur itcha ger. When a convert sojourns in your land with you, a person converts to Judaism, and he wasn't always the way he was before, right? He wasn't always the way he was before, and he's converting to Yiddishkeit, to Judaism. Loi soinu oisoi. Don't afflict him, don't taunt him. Rashi says, how would you taunt a convert? And you'll say, Mister, remember, you used to be an idol worshiper. You used to be a guy who would serve the sun and the moon and put the kids through fire. And that's very painful for the person. We have a story of, in the Gemara, it tells a story of Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, that Reish Lakish used to be the chief of the robbers, of a band of robbers. And one day they were discussing different knives. And I think Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, who was his brother-in-law, who used to be the thief, you should know this stuff. You used to do this for a living. You should know the different knives that the Talmud was discussing. You're an expert in it. And he was very offended, very, very hurt. So the Torah is making a special mitzvah that we need to be sensitive uniquely to converts. It's a prohibition because they're very sensitive, and you should not remind the person. Maybe imagine a guy was in jail, and you don't bring it up. There's certain things you shouldn't bring up, and don't remind, even though it's true and he knows about his past, but it's not something you should bring up. So a convert should not be brought up where he used to be. It's a very sensitive thing. Verse 34, Ke'ezrach mikem, he should be like a native. Treat him like a native. The convert that lives with you, don't make any ego or like greater than, he's not part of the community. Sometimes people tell me they have that between Sfardim and Ashkenazim. Oh, he's not Ashkenaz, he's not Sfar, whatever, The convert has to be like you. You have to love him like you love yourself. So the convert goes into, remember we said that you have to l'reacha kamecha. So the Torah is telling you, it's not any less than any other Jew. You also have a commandment to love a convert just as much as you love yourself. He becomes a brother. He's a brother. He says something interesting. He says, especially you should be sensitive to this, because you yourselves were foreigners in Egypt. And as Rashi says, very interesting, blemish that you have, don't point out in other people. I love it in politics today. Everybody makes fun of the other side, oh, he's such a faker. Whenever it goes to their side, if something's wrong with you, don't bring it up in the other person, And by the way, something that's very common. A lot of the Torah actually says elsewhere that if somebody is questioning another person's lineage, that they're not really Jewish or whatever, questioning that they're maybe born from a prohibited marriage, you should check the person that's pointing it out and everybody else, because often a person will point out a blemish in another person when they themselves have it. But and etiquette is just, Rashi's telling you, the verse is telling you etiquette. You yourselves are converts. You were converts in Egypt. Yeah, you're strangers. So stop abusing other people, what you yourself have to be sensitive to. Sometimes they say actually today that the African American community and the Jewish should actually work together instead of fighting like they are sometimes in Brooklyn and so on, because they should have a sensitivity to each other of the persecution they've been through. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, and then he finishes again, I am God, your God. And as someone asked me yesterday, who asked, why does it say I am God, your God? Again, Rashi tells us why it ends with I am God, your God here, and that is to tell you I'm the God of both of you. equally, your God and his God equally. Stop making, status and you're superior and looking down. Hashem says, I'm equal. Once someone converts to Judaism, they're full-on brother, they're full-on Jew, and they have to be accepted equal. Verse 35. Leisasu avel b'mishpat. Okay, so now we just finished learning about converts, and Hashem tells us we finished that topic because we're going to discuss a couple topics today, and that is that the respect and love, the way you need to treat a convert, not to remind him of his past. Now we're going to get into business, honest and fair business, and we're going to talk about the ways they would do business in those days. I mean, we don't use a lot of the tools and the techniques the way they would do business, but it goes the same thing today, right? You want to sell a car that you wind back the speedometer, so the car looks like, and nobody knows. He thinks the car has 10,000 miles less, 100,000 miles less. Or you want to sell a fake handbag that's not really true, or a diamond maybe that's imperfect, and you claiming that it's perfect, whatever, and so on. So these are all different ways that a person can cheat in business. And here comes the verses that teach us about the honesty that a person needs to have when doing business. Let's see, verse 35. Loisasu avil b'mishpat. Don't make perversions. Don't make cheating and stealing and bad things. Fraud. Don't make fraud. No fraud b'mishpat, in justice. Now, I think I saw this here, and Rashi says, very interesting. He says the truth is that we are all judges. Remember, we learned this. Remember when we said that be fair in judgment, we meant it on a literal level, that a judge has to be very careful to be honest, not to side with the poor or side with the rich, God forbid. Right? We learned that. And we said the truth is every person's a judge, because we all have to judge people favorably. We judge people the whole day. And he says the truth is we're all miniature judges, because every day, and this is all of us that work in the business and every other part of our life, we have decisions to make. And we have to decide how to run our business whenever we do a sale. And we all make a judgment call at that moment. How honest and how fair am I going to be in my business at this moment? Am I going to raise the prices without telling him? I remember this guy, actually, he was a salesman. He was teaching how to sell. So he used to sell glasses. Actually, I'm going to take my son for an eye doctor appointment right after this class. So he used to sell glasses. So he said, how did he sell it? The guy would walk in, and the guy would say, how much is these pair of glasses? He would lift the frame, and he would say $100, let's say. And the guy wouldn't flinch, and he would say, that's for the frames. He says, and so how much are the lenses? So we'd say, it's another $50. And if the guy didn't flinch, he says, for each lens. Basically, the guy was a real salesman. I don't know if that's a good thing, like we're going to see. So you have to be, I'm not saying what's honest or not, but we're going to see very clearly defined that there really has to be honest markers and so on in your business. And let's see what the Torah is like. The Rashi says, he describes the person that cheats. You're the same level as a judge. And you're called Avel, Sonny, disgusting, Meshukitz, horrible, Cherim, very terrible things. And when a judge perverts justice, and we each do that in our daily basis when we're doing justice, we have to make that decision. And God forbid, if there's injustice, we bring 5 terrible things, Rashi says, to the world. He brings there. First of all, we defile the land. We also desecrate God's name. If somebody cheats or steals, we're desecrating God's name. We move away the Shechina, God's presence, and you throw the Jews under war, and we chase the Jews out of the land. So being honest, and Rashi is telling us that this honesty in business, which we're going to talk about today, is a very, very serious thing. So what are the examples that the Torah is going to tell us in business? So first of all, he says in verse 35, the midah. The midah is with measurements, which means land markers. So God forbid, I guess, I mean, today we have a whole system when the way they measure your land, but maybe in the olden days, which you could cheat a little bit, you could add another few feet on your property, take a few feet away from the other guy's property. So he's telling you that Torah tells you don't steal somebody else's property. Don't cheat and steal, maybe like today with Russia and Ukraine. They want to take over the land, whatever. I don't know, country's obviously a different game, but different situation, but don't steal someone else's property. That's b'midah. B'mishkal. Mishkal is weights. That's what it means, literally weights. And ub'mishura, so don't cheat with weights. Ub'mishura, mishura is the way to measure liquid and dry substances. So, like in the olden days, I think the Rashi will say it soon. How would they weigh? They would put. We'll see this in a minute. There was a scale, and then you'd put 1 pound of rocks. Let's say a rock that weighed a pound on one side of the scale, and then you give the guy a pound of rice on the other side of the scale. So, if you wanted to cheat, you would make that 1 pound rock really a little bit less than 1 pound, and then you'd give him a little bit less rice or whatever the item was. You could cheat in that kind of way. So you could cheat in land, move the marker of the land, and then use his land. You could cheat in the weights, as I just said, and also maybe like the liquid. You have different ways to measure liquid and solids. And there could be a person. This is a guy who has a shop who's selling this kind of stuff. And as I said, if you're in car, you'll turn to in today's day and age, right? We don't really use this kind of weights to measure stuff, but there's other things to do. There are other ways to measure different things. Like let's say a scale in the airport when you're putting on your suitcase and they make the scale a little bit off, it could be cheating and stealing from the person. So we have to be careful. Ma'oznei tzedek, and here's where he talks about the weights, the scales. Ma'oznei tzedek, you shall have true scales. So again, right? That, as I explained, the scale would work is that you'd put the pound on one side and then you put the whatever you're giving him, a pound of that on the other side. Don't cheat. Avnei tzedek. Okay, Avnei tzedek is going to go through the list over here. Avnei tzedek. Wait, what did Rashi say here? Avnei tzedek so Avnei tzedek are those stones. Ma'oznei tzedek is the scales. Avnei tzedek are the stones that you put in the scales to take the measurement. Okay. Then we have Ephas tzedek. That is the scale kind of thing that you measure dry. Vehin, and that's the kind of scale that you use to measure liquid. Vehin tzedek lachem. It should always be fair. No monkey business. Fair and accurate scales in all these ways. Ani Hashem. I am Hashem. Hashem says, "Elokechem, your God." That took you out of Egypt. So Rashi says, again, why are you ending with I am God who took you out of Egypt when you're talking about fair business practices and keeping good scales? So Rashi gives two interesting reasons that he said. One is, why did I take you out of Egypt? Because you'll be a respectable nation. I guess, I didn't free you from Egypt, so you should sit and scam each other later on, right? You're supposed to be a fair and honest people. That's why I took you out of Egypt. So go and now be fair and honest people. I want to make a nation, and you be my people, and you're going in on a bunch of con artists. That's number one. Number two, he says, I'm God who took you out of Egypt, who was so sophisticated that I knew who was Jewish and who was not, right? The Egyptian firstborns died, and the Jewish firstborns didn't die. So God had to know the difference between the seed, the sperm that created this person and that person. And I was smart enough to know who was who. So I know the person. They used to have one of the scams that they did. Rashi tells you one of the scams that they would do is you would buy, I guess, in the store a pound weight. So it said on it a pound, and it was clear, and everybody could buy whatever. You could purchase a pound weight, and you bring it to your store. But the scam is that they would put it in salt. They would take that weight and soak it in salt. And somehow that would alter the weight, maybe make it lighter. Somehow the salt would actually alter the pound. It wasn't really a true pound anymore. I guess it was less. And Hashem says, you're not going to outsmart God. I'm God who took you out of Egypt. I knew the difference between an Egyptian firstborn and a Jewish firstborn. Don't play no games. Don't think you could pull the covers over God. And keep my commandments, the one that don't make sense. And all the commandments, even the ones that do make sense. You should do them. Ani Hashem, I am God. Okay, so that is the end of the business practices. So Hashem really gets down and detailed and says every method you have. By the way, he doesn't just say don't cheat, don't own, right? If you go back to the verse, I believe it says, make sure in your possession shouldn't be a fake stone, a fake scale. You must have, Jewish people are expected to be true and honest. Everyone is expected to be true and honest in business, that there's a responsibility and a commitment. And Hashem says, what did I take you out of Egypt for if you're going to become this kind of cheating kind of people? Okay, no Ponzi schemes. Verse number 1 of the next chapter, we're going to continue with idolatry and the seriousness of it. Now, we discussed in yesterday's Chumash serving idols. Remember, we said you pass your kid through the fire, and we spoke about the the armpits, the one that armpit speaks, and the one that speaks, the bone speaks out of the mouth, all those different things. Remember that? So he says, in today's Chumash, what's the punishment, which he didn't discuss yesterday, for someone who serves idols? And we know in Judaism, it's a very heinous crime. It's a very serious crime, the crime of serving idols. It's denying the truth about Hashem and the world, which is obviously very, very strict. So we're going to see about that today. To the Jewish people say, God says to Moshe, Ish b'nei Yisrael, any man from among the Jewish people, any man, Yisrael, or any convert or stranger that lives among with the Jewish people, that will, God forbid, give his child to the idol called Moilach, which we discussed in chapter 18, 2 chapters ago, one of the kind of idols. Mois Yumas, he will surely die. He should be put to death, capital punishment, because idolatry, idol worship is punishable with capital punishment. Now, who technically, originally, should be the ones to administer capital punishment? Obviously, it's the Beth Din, the Sanhedrin. You'd go to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin would investigate the guy and so on, and they would put the guy to death. They would give him capital punishment. However, what happens if the Beth Din doesn't have the power? For some reason, it's not a strong Beth Din, they're not able to. So then, Am ha'aretz, Yirgamu ba'avin, the nations of the land, the people must get together and must administer the death penalty, the capital punishment, to the perpetrator, to the person who served Avodah Zarah, to the person who served idols. Now, what is the punishment that the idolater gets? There's 4 methods of capital punishment: strangulation, and there's the sword, and there's stoning. Those are 3 of the 4, and the Torah tells us for idolatry, the capital punishment is through stoning. Now, why are they called, by the way, why are they called Am Ha'aretz, the nation of the land? In other words, it's saying if the Beth Din doesn't have the power, the people of the community should get together and make sure that the guy gets the punishment that needs to be meted out. So usually, often, by the way, in our modern lingo, Am Ha'aretz is like he's illiterate. He's an Am Ha'aretz. He's an earthly person. He's a man of the land, a land person, an earthly, low, kind of uses derogatory sometimes to refer to people. But here it's very interesting. Rashi tells us the opposite kind of. Am Ha'aretz, the nation of the land, means the nation that because of him, the land was created. In other words, the regular people, the regular Jews, I guess, the people of the land who follow Hashem's mitzvahs, that is the reason that Hashem created the whole world. So these guys who are observing the Torah mitzvahs, they see a guy, doing idol worship, and they make sure that Hashem's word is holy and the law is followed out. Those are the people, that's the reason that Hashem even created the whole world. So these are very, very special people. Another explanation to it, these are the people that because of them, not just that the world was created, but they will inherit Israel. These people that are, I guess, simple, sincere, not even part of the Beth Din. They're simple, sincere people because they keep the mitzvahs, and it's very serious to them that if God forbid there's an idolater among them, they're punished as they should be. They're going to make, even the Beth Din doesn't have the power, they're going to step up to the plate because of them, that we merit their nations of the land, because of them, we will get the land of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so very interesting. The Beth Din really administers the punishment. The Beth Din has the power. We ask the community to step in. So God says, verse 3, and I will put my attention, I'll put my attention on that person. I'm going to give him all my attention. Remember we learned this in Rashi also the other time. I'm going to drop all the other business I have. We learned, I think, in Rashi the other time, the explanation is that I'm not going to show my kind face to him. And I'm going to just focus on him. And I will do kares, cut him off, right? We learned that means a guy will die by 50 and his children will pass away young. You won't have a continuation of the family. You won't have descendants. Why? Because this guy is giving his children for idolatry. Now, Rashi says something interesting, that the person that will get cut off could never happen to a community. If God forbid, maybe there's more people sinning, God will not cut them all off. It's only in a personal one-on-one decision basis that there are people that are serving idols. Will Hashem administer the kares punishment, which is a punishment from God, that God makes sure that he dies before 50 and his children pass away too. Why is it so serious? God says, "Leman tamei es mikdashi," because he made impure es mikdashi, my holy ones, my Jewish people. This guy's coming, and he's coming into my nation that I have my nation, my people, and he's coming and he's violating, he's defiling my people. And to profane Hashem's holy name by putting his son to idol worship, by bringing his son as a gift to the idols. And therefore, Hashem is very severe, and Karis is the punishment for this person violating my people, defiling my people, and defiling Hashem's holy name. Verse 4, V'im halem yalimu. But what happens? I'm telling you, Bezdin should administer the punishment, and if not, Bezdin the community. But what if people ignore him? So he says, Im halem yalimu, if you'll ignore and ignore. Rashi says something very interesting, very true. If you ignore him once, we're not going to look, we're not going to say anything, we don't want to get involved. You will come to continue ignoring a lot of people. And it's gonna become corrupt. Get rid of, I guess, there's one guy who's doing idolatry, God forbid, bringing his kids to idolatry, administer punishment, take care of business. Because if not, it's going to happen again, and you're going to have to cover your eyes again. Once you cover your eyes, I guess it could be a very big problem, because it's going to lead to continued, persistent corruption. And if the lower Jewish courts don't, which is the smaller Sanhedrin of 23 rabbis, which have the power, at least in the times of Beis Hamikdash, to administer capital punishment, also ignore it, then guess what? The great big Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, will also ignore it, and you'll have a corrupt system. So he says, if you guys will not do what I'm telling you to do, you're going to ignore it. And the people of the land, and the Bezin doesn't have the power, and the people don't jump in and help. From the man, when the guy who's giving his child over to the idol, the Molech idol, and not going to do capital punishment like I'm telling you to do. So then, I'm going to place my face not just in him, and his whole family. And they're all going to suffer. His whole family is going to suffer, and I'm going to give, how are they going to suffer? So as Rashi explains, I will do capital punishment to him, the guy who served idols. And he's going to die by 50. But Mishpachta, his family, they didn't serve the idol, but they didn't do business. The Jewish people didn't stand up. And I'm going to punish them with pain, with other kinds of pains, not with early death, but with other kinds of pain. Rashi asks, why is it that the family of the guy specifically is being pointed out that they're being punished? What did they do wrong? It was one guy in the family that was serving the idol worship. Only he should be punished. Why is his whole family getting punished? And Rashi says, very interesting, he says there's no tax collector that the family is not supporting him. Basically, the whole family is in on it. If one guy is a tax collector, they're all supporting his unhealthy behavior. Now, tax collectors are not today's kind of tax collectors. They used to be very different, the old-fashioned tax collectors. How did it work? The government, the king of whatever, a bunch of countries would go to this guy, let's say in the city, and say, I want $100,000, $1 million from your town. I don't care how you get it. You give me $1 million. I need from your town $1 million. Now that guy had a lot of power. First of all, he had the king backing him, and he could go, and he was the one. There was one guy who decided how much every guy should pay. Usually this guy was a ganav. Usually he was a thief. He was a terrible person who would go around and force people how much. It wasn't like a legal system like we have today, which everybody pays legal, whatever, or so on. But it was a very corrupt kind of atmosphere. And he says, if there's a guy who's involved in this kind of business, if a guy's involved in the mafia, his whole family's probably involved in the mafia too, because they're supporting and backing the corrupt behavior that this person has. So therefore, the family won't get capital punishment by Hashem, but they will still get Yisurim and pain because they're backing and helping this guy. And that, continuing in the verse, I will cut off that person, he will die, but not the rest of the family. And all the people that are going astray after him, to make other people to do Avodah Zarah, idol worship, and they'll be punished. So, by the way, this is what we're scared of, right? It's a cancer that spreads. It's a mold that's growing. If you don't stop it right away, it's going to become much worse. And other people besides the guy are now going to be punished and going to suffer from this punishment. So it's very imperative that the Jewish people get rid of this thing. Rashi also adds that it's not just this Moloch kind of idol worship. I think it was with passing a kid through fire, if I'm correct. But there was other ways that you serve idols. There are 4 general ways. Any of those ways, it's prohibited to serve idols. For example, slaughtering an animal to an idol, or offering incense, or bowing. All these things are prohibited. Not just giving your child to a Molech, to the Molech idol, but any kind of idolatry is included in this prohibition. Rashi tells us, and God forbid, if you don't stop it, it's going to spread and spread throughout the Jewish people. And the purple, that people that turn to the other kind of idolatry, which we learned, the Av, the Yidoni, Liznas Achareim, to sin after them, to stray after them. Sandi as Pani Benefshahi, I will put my face in that person. I will cut him off. Also, karas for people who go after those idols from the nation. And he finishes and he says, Viskadashtem, v'yisim kedayishim, you should be holy. Because I am God your God. Remember, we learned that God's holy and he wants to have a relationship with us. So we need to be holy. Earlier, we learned the word be holy means don't get involved in all these immoral relations. And now holiness means don't serve idols. Okay, so that is the end of the Chumash for Shabbos. Let's see for Friday. Let's see if we can do Shabbos. I didn't get a chance to prepare it. I got a chance to prepare a little bit of it. Let's see if we could at least do a little bit. We might have to leave it. You know what? I'm going to have to leave it over here. And with Hashem's help, we'll do this on Sunday, God willing, at 12 o'clock on Sunday with Hashem's help. That is it. Thank you. Let me just stop this over here. Thank you all for joining.